Sit down, my boss said, eyes glinting like a predator circling its prey. The boardroom smelled like polished wood and stale ambition. I swallowed hard. I had poured everything into this job, late nights, weekends, promises I kept no one saw. You've been doing well, he continued, the words slipping from his lips like honey laced with venom. My chest swelled for a moment. Hope, and then he leaned closer, voice low, almost tender. But he paused, letting the silence stretch like a guillotine. I don't think you are fit to lead. The room froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. My face burned. I could feel the stares, the whispers like knives slicing through my confidence. Excuse me, I managed, my voice tighter than I intended. You heard me, he said, smirking. Unfit, I said, tried to be patient, but leadership requires more than your abilities. Laughter bubbled quietly around the room, polite but cruel. One of my colleagues, someone I thought was an ally, shifted in her seat, eyes darting anywhere but mine. Is this a joke? My voice cracked, betraying the fury I tried to mask. He leaned back, hands steepled, enjoying every second. No joke. The board agrees. It steps for the company SEP's best interest. I wanted to scream. My throat tightened. Every nod of approval I had believed in, every smile from him, it was all a lie, a calculated trap. My chest ached, not from the words alone, but from the betrayal. Later, alone in the dark of my apartment, I couldn't stop replaying it, the whisper of his words. The smirks, the sly looks from people I thought were my team. Why? I whispered to myself, pacing. Why would he do this to me? I could feel the rage starting, slow and deliberate. It wasn't chaotic, it was sharp, precise. A blade forming in my chest. I clenched my fists until my nails bit into my palms. I remembered every moment I had trusted him. Every compliment he had given me. Every nod of approval I thought meant I was safe. I had walked blind, thinking loyalty mattered. Foolish. And yet, the humiliation, the shock, the anger, it lit something inside me, a fire I hadn't known I carried. I'll show you, I muttered, voice low, almost a growl. You think this is the end? You've only just begun to see me. The whispers of the boardroom haunted me, but they also fueled me. Every sly glance, every whispered joke became fuel. I wouldn't just survive this. I would turn it into my weapon. That night I stared at my reflection. I saw the betrayal etched into my face, but beneath it, a promise. Rage, yes, but also clarity. This wasn't the breaking point. It was the beginning. I whispered to the mirror, almost gently. Unfit to lead, watch me. And for the first time, the fire inside me felt like power, not chaos, not desperation, power. The glass ceiling had shattered. Now it was my turn to decide how to fall or rise. I walked home like I was carrying invisible bruises. Every step felt heavy, as if the pavement itself wanted to remind me of my failure. Hey, you okay? My mother asked softly, peeking from the doorway. I forced a smile because I couldn't let her see the storm inside me. Yeah, just tired, I said. She didn't push. She never pushed, she just handed me a cup of tea, eyes full of worry. You know, it's not the end of the world. I swallowed hard, nodding, but the words felt like glass in my throat. I know, I muttered, barely audible. My hands shook. I wanted to scream, to throw the cup, to let her see the fire consuming me, but I didn't. I couldn't. Then my sister appeared, bouncing in like nothing had happened. Come on, you're overthinking. Just let it go. People say things, doesn't it mean it's true? I laughed bitterly, a sharp, hollow sound. Let it go, I echoed. You have no idea what that felt like, to be humiliated in front of everyone. My work, my respect, gone in one smirk. She frowned, glancing at our mother. I stand just saying, you can let one day define you. I clenched my fists, resisting the urge to grab her by the shoulders and shake her. One day? I hissed. You think it's just one day? Do you have any idea what it feels like to walk into the office tomorrow and see them? The whispers, the sly looks, to hear your own name paired with unfits like it's a punchline. She flinched, her optimism faltering. I didn't mean. I know, I cut her off, voice dropping low. You mean well, but this is instead about being nice. It's steps about survival. That night, I couldn't sleep. My apartment was dark, but every sound felt amplified. The tick of the clock, the hum of the fridge. Every notification on my phone made my chest tighten. I ignored them all, but my mind raced. Every replay of that boardroom moment, every smirk and whisper carved itself deeper into me. I called my friend, my only lifeline outside the chaos. I can't. I just can't, I said, voice cracking. Talk to me, they urged. What happened? I told them, every detail, every stinging word, and instead of pity, instead of advice, I felt something else stir, a spark, small but insistent. You sir not broken, they said. You sir just getting ready. That line stuck with me. Just getting ready. I replayed it over and over, letting it sink in. The humiliation, the doubt, the sleepless nights. They weren't a death sentence. They were fuel. I realized something crucial. My reputation might be bruised, my pride wounded, but my drive wasn't dead. That fire, buried deep beneath the pain, was growing. Quiet, patient, hungry. I whispered to the darkness of my apartment, a vow to no one but myself. This isn't Suts the end, it's Suts just the beginning, and they will see, they will all see. Isolation wrapped around me like a heavy cloak, but inside, a seed of power had been planted. Revenge wasn't a thought anymore. It was no longer a fleeting desire. It was becoming a necessity. And in that silence, I smiled. Not a happy smile. A calculated one. One that promised the world hadn't broken me. Not yet. Not ever. I arrived at the office early, long before anyone else. The lights flickered on, casting a sterile glow over the empty cubicles. It felt wrong. Quiet. Too quiet. I whispered to myself, more to anchor myself than anything else. Time to see the truth. Emails, reports, memos I'd ignored for years. Patterns started to emerge, like veins running through stone. Every promotion I'd missed, every meeting I'd been excluded from, every compliment I thought genuine, suddenly felt like bait. I leaned back, eyes scanning another message chain. Did you see how she presented today? One colleague wrote, she's ambitious, but maybe too much. Could be a problem, another replied. I froze. Problem, not incompetent, not unfit. A problem. And then I found it. A chain buried under layers of forwards and replies. A network of whispers, subtle nudges, quiet manipulations. Every move I'd made, every nod of approval I'd earned, had been carefully dismantled behind my back. I muttered under my breath, voice tight with shock. He did this, he orchestrated it all. One by one, I traced the threads. A friendly colleague suddenly acting distant. That wasn't coincidence. That promotion I lost by a hair? Calculated. A meeting cancelled at the last second. Part of the pattern. I caught myself laughing. Low, bitter, almost insane. All this time I thought it was me. Not him. My phone buzzed. A text from a friend. Are you okay? You've been quiet all day. I ignored it. I didn't need sympathy. I needed clarity. I opened a memo labeled Next Quarter Leadership Strategy. There it was, his handwriting. Clear instructions to subtly undermine me, whisper doubts, plant mistakes, highlight failures, not about ability. Never about ability, personal, targeted, surgical. I read it again, my pulse raced, my hands trembled, rage bubbled up, but it was different this time, not chaotic, not desperate, cold, precise, focused. I whispered to the empty room, almost reverently, this isn't set just work, this is war. A colleague appeared at the edge of my cubicle, clearing their throat. Oh, you still here? I looked up, eyes hard. Yeah, just catching up. They hesitated. Everyone's steps talking about what happened last week. Are you okay? I smiled, but it was sharp, calculating. I stum better than okay. I stum figuring it out. Their brow furrowed. Figuring out what? I leaned closer, voice low. Who really runs this place? They backed away, eyes wide. I returned to my screen, ignoring them. They wouldn't understand, not yet. Hours passed, and I dug deeper. Each email, each memo, each subtle manipulation I uncovered built a map of betrayal. Faces of colleagues flashed before me, some fearful, some pitiful, some complicit, and my boss, the mastermind. Every whisper, every smirk, every false compliment, It was all part of a plan to ensure I'd never rise. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of it settle. The confusion, the hurt. It was still there, but now it had a shape, a direction, a path forward. I whispered again, this time with conviction. You thought you could break me, but now, I see. The realization hit hard. Revenge wouldn't be messy. It wouldn't be blind rage or frantic emotion. It would be precise, calculated, unstoppable. I opened a new document and began mapping out my next moves. Every ally I could trust, every weakness I could exploit, every misstep he had taken, catalogued. I was no longer the victim. I was the strategist. A message popped up from my boss. Let Seps have a chat later. Don't Sept forget the board is watching. I stared at it, smiling thinly. Bored or no board, I stummed the one watching now. I shut the computer, my reflection in the dark screen staring back at me. My anger had evolved into clarity. My confusion had hardened into purpose. I whispered into the silent office, almost a vow. This isn't set just payback. It Seps justice, and it Seps coming calculated, clean and unstoppable. For the first time since the humiliation, I felt power coursing through me. The fire was no longer just survival. It was strategy, and it would consume everything in its path. The map of betrayal lay in front of me, and I was ready. I didn't walk into the office that morning. I glided. Every step measured, deliberate, calm. Inside my chest burned, not with panic, but with purpose. Hey, you're here early, said Arya, my junior colleague, the one I'd mentored when she first joined. She looked at me like she'd noticed the change, the shift in my energy. Morning, I said softly. Sit. We need to talk. She raised an eyebrow, curiosity sparking. About. I leaned closer, voice low, almost a whisper. The office, the politics, the people who think they can control everything. Her eyes widened. You mean? Yes, I interrupted, cutting through the hesitation. I mean everything, the whispers, the nods, the little games. I sped been blind, but not anymore. She sat, nodding slowly. So? What's Seps the plan? I smiled, but it wasn't step warm. It was sharp, precise. We observe, we map, we find weaknesses. Everyone has them, everyone, especially him. Arya leaned in, eager. Him? I nodded. My boss. The man who orchestrated my downfall. He thrives on admiration, on the illusion that everyone is in awe of him. Ego is his Achilles heel. That Seps where we strike. She scribbled notes, eyes darting around the empty office. And, we stir really doing this. I laughed softly, bitterly. We Sept are already doing it. Every smile, every casual laugh in meetings. I watch. I study. I wait. Patience is power. Her hand shook slightly as she wrote. And no one suspects. I shook my head. Not yet. That Seps the beauty of it. Every move we make seems small, innocent, harmless. But inside, I paused, letting the thrill of it settle in. Inside, we reclaim control. I leaned back, folding my hands. Remember when I helped you on that first project? Told you it wasn't stressed about being the loudest but the smartest. That's stress what this is. A chessboard, and we bore about to make the first moves. Arya Sepp's lips curved in a tentative smile. And if he notices, I shrugged, then he underestimates me. And that Sepp's a mistake he shall pay for. For the next hour we mapped everything. Allies, enemies, neutrals, the quiet observers, the fearful, the sycophants, every weakness catalogued, every tendency noted. I whispered at one point, almost to myself, every move counts. One wrong gesture, one exposed doubt, and the dominoes start to fall. Arya looked at me, eyes wide. You stared different, stronger. I've never seen you like this. I smiled again, sharper this time. This isn't stepped about being stronger. It steps about being strategic. Pain teaches you things, clarity, and clarity is power. I glanced across the office at his empty chair. The man who thought he had me trapped, who smiled, who whispered, who manipulated, he didn't know. He couldn't know. Not yet. A small thrill ran through me. Watching him, studying him from afar, I felt the first taste of reclaiming control. It wasn't chaos. It wasn't fury. It was calculated, sweet, precise. Arya broke the silence. So, first target. I turned to her, eyes cold, confident. The first target isn't set him. It's Sep's perception. We cell shift the balance, slowly, let the cracks show. Let the board start questioning. Let him wonder who Sep's really in charge. She nodded, understanding dawning, silent but effective. I leaned forward, voice low. Exactly. Invisible power, untouchable until the right moment. By the time he notices, the game will be over. The chessboard already set. I stood, feeling the weight of control settle over me like armor. The thrill surged, quiet but intoxicating. Every small, careful move, every subtle observation, this was my reclamation. Arya followed suit, her resolve matching mine. "We're ready," she said. I nodded, letting a smile tug at my lips. We sep already begun. And in that moment, in the silent, empty office, I realized for the first time since the betrayal, I wasn't running. I was orchestrating, every pawn, every player, every weakness catalogued. The first moves were made, and soon, everything would change. I smiled at him across the conference table, the same polite, professional smile I'd worn for years, but inside, a different storm raged. Calm, controlled, precise. "Morning," my boss said, voice dripping with confidence. That ego, I could almost taste its fragility. "Morning," I replied softly, leaning back in my chair, innocent, harmless, calculated. Arya nudged my notebook under the table, a subtle reminder, the first seeds were ready. I started small. A missed detail here. "Oh, I thought the memo went through," I said, voice casual, a smile, a shrug. He nodded, assuming I was apologetic. Perfect. Later in the elevator, I let a comment slip, quiet, almost accidental. "Funny, how that client is asking about last quarter SEP's numbers again. Didn't Stet think anyone noticed?" His eyebrow twitched. "Numbers? What do you mean?" "Oh, just something I overheard," I said, soft as silk, nothing major. He didn't respond, but I saw it in his eyes. A flicker, a crack. In meetings, I dropped hints, carefully phrased, ambiguous. "Interesting that the Johnson account bounced back. Seems like some oversight from last month, huh?" He laughed, a little too loudly. "Oversight? Hardly, everything SEP's under control." I nodded, polite, innocent. But I could see the doubt creep in. I could almost hear it whispering. Was I too confident? Did I miss something? By the end of the week, small errors once invisible were surfacing. Missed signatures, forgotten reports, overlooked emails. My boss's arrogance had always shielded him. Now, under subtle scrutiny, the cracks appeared. At lunch, a board member approached me. I heard some concerns about last month's projections, they said casually, eyes flicking toward him across the room. I smiled. "Yes, I noticed that too. Just small things, easily fixed, I think." The seed planted. A question. A doubt. Nothing overt. No lies. Just perception. Back at my desk, Arya whispered, excitement in her voice. "They start noticing, aren't they?" I nodded. Calm. Patience. The trick is subtlety. Never force the cracks. Just let them widen naturally. He stormed past my desk one afternoon, red-faced. "Why wasn't Stet this in the report?" I looked up, expression neutral. "I thought the memo covered everything." His jaw tightened. "You thought?" I nodded again. Soft, harmless, deadly. Later in private, Arya grinned. "You such enjoying this way too much." I allowed a brief smile, careful to hide the thrill behind professionalism. "No, this is work, just careful work." I watched as colleagues shifted. Some avoided him, subtly testing his decisions. Others whispered, hesitant, uncertain, and I stayed in plain sight, the calm observer, the invisible hand guiding perception. Each hint, each pointed question, each overlooked email became a thread. Pull one, and another loosened. Pull another, and the fabric of his authority started to unravel. I whispered to myself, voice low, almost intimate, "This is the start, the first real taste," and they one set even know it sets me. At a board meeting, he presented numbers confidently, though sweat dotted his temple. I asked one question, gentle, neutral. "Can you walk us through the discrepancy in the East Division projections?" He faltered, a microsecond too long, Eyes darted. Faces in the room shifted. Murmurs barely audible, but I caught them. The dominoes moving. After the meeting, one board member lingered. We should double-check some of these figures, they said. Voice careful. Nothing serious, but... I nodded politely, masking the thrill pulsing through me. Of course, attention to detail is always important. Walking back to my desk, I felt it, the first twinge of triumph. Small, subtle, but undeniable. The game had started, the perception of control slipping from his hands and into mine. Arya followed silently, whispering, "Eat steps working, you stir unstoppable." I let a private smile tug at my lips. "Not yet," I said softly. "But the seeds are planted, the roots will grow, and soon everything he thought untouchable once set be." I returned to my work, polite, composed, invisible. But inside, a plan breathed, alive. Revenge wasn't a distant thought anymore. It was living, moving, subtle, and I held the strings. The board saw doubts. My boss felt cracks. I felt power. And I knew, deep down, the harvest was coming. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at the ceiling. The night was silent, but my mind was loud. Every move in the office, every whisper, every hint of doubt I planted replayed endlessly. "Do you ever wonder if you've gone too far?" I asked aloud, though only the darkness answered. A soft buzz, a message from my best friend. "You sup are overthinking. You sup are got nothing left to lose. Just keep going." I stared at it. I wanted to believe them. I wanted to feel safe in their certainty, but they didn't see the silent war raging inside me. The tension, the anticipation, the thrill of control. "I sup not sure I have nothing left to lose," I muttered. My voice cracked, small and vulnerable. "I have everything riding on this. Every small misstep could ruin me." I remembered today's board meeting. He had stumbled again, just slightly, and I had watched it happen. One careless smile, a missed detail, a slight hesitation, enough to seed doubt, enough to make the board question. I should have felt triumph, and I did, but only briefly, buried beneath the anxiety that the next mistake could undo it all. Arya had whispered as we walked past him in the hallway. "He doesn't know yet. He has no idea who Sep's in control." I nodded, feeling the fire stir again. Calm, patient, precise. That was the balance I had to maintain. Too eager, and I'd reveal myself. Too hesitant, and the momentum could stall. Later my phone buzzed again. "Best friend, remember why you started. Don said, let fear blind you." I put it down, closing my eyes. They were right. Fear was always there lurking, but it had shifted. It wasn't panic anymore. It was focus. It was the dark satisfaction of watching someone crumble without realizing the architect was me. I whispered into the dark, "Every misstep you make, every false move, it's Sup's mine to watch, and mine to shape." Sleep didn't come easily. I drifted in and out, heart racing every time a notification popped up. Each one felt like a test. A small success, a small disaster, a reminder of how delicate this game had become. At one point I spoke aloud, almost to challenge the night itself. "Am I patient enough? Strong enough? Smart enough?" The silence answered back, and in that silence, I found clarity. Revenge wasn't about fury. It wasn't about the public humiliation I had suffered. It was about control. Precision, patience, watching the pieces move exactly where I wanted. I thought of him, my boss, sitting in meetings, unaware. The arrogance that had shielded him for years now betrayed him in microseconds. One overlooked detail, one forgotten follow-up, one casual nod that I twisted into doubt, each a thread unraveling his carefully constructed image. I leaned back, letting the quiet soak in. I remembered the first humiliation, the sting of his words, the whispers, the smirks, and now, I realized something I hadn't before: the power of silent revenge. The subtle, invisible hand that could crush him without bloodshed, without chaos, without giving him a chance to fight back. I smiled, faint, almost imperceptible, not triumphantly, not yet, but an acknowledgement of the path I'd carved. "Best friend." Such text buzzed one last time. "Be careful. But remember, you such are untouchable when you such are calm." I read it twice, savoring the truth. Calm was my armor, patience was my weapon, and the game was still in its early stages. I whispered into the dark, voice steady, Every misstep you make feeds me. Every arrogance, every oversight, it steps mine to use. And when the time comes, the world will see, but not before I sip and ready. The night stretched on. I lay back, eyes open, mind racing. Anxiety lingered, but it had purpose now. Reflection had tempered the fire. It wasn't chaotic anymore. It was focused, deliberate. I had begun to understand the intoxicating satisfaction of silent control. The war wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. And that was its beauty. As the first light of dawn touched my blinds, I whispered, almost reverently, "This is patience. This is power. And soon, this is victory." The boardroom smelled of polished wood and tension. I stepped in, folder in hand, and suddenly the air felt different, heavier, charged. Every chair faced me, every eye waiting. "Good morning," I said, voice steady, calm, innocent, polished. But inside, my heart pounded like war drums. He looked at me first, my boss, smug, confident, until he caught the glint in my eyes. Then the smirk faltered, a flicker of doubt. "What's this?" he asked, voice casual but tight, as if expecting a minor complaint. "Just some information I thought the board should review," I said, placing the folder carefully on the table. I opened it, revealing emails, memos, and notes, the map of his manipulations, carefully documented. Every whisper, every subtle sabotage, every calculated move designed to keep me down. A board member leaned forward, brow furrowed. "Is this?" "Yes," I replied, letting my voice carry. Internal emails, proof of decisions made to undermine colleagues, obscure meetings designed to isolate staff, all verified, all documented. My boss swallowed. That SEP's misleading. Context matters." I raised a finger, soft but cutting. "Context? You created the context. You engineered perception. You decided who succeeds and who fails based on personal bias, not performance. And now it sits here, for everyone to see." The room shifted. A murmur ran through the board members. Eyes darted, nodding, whispering. I felt the energy change, subtle, electric, unstoppable. "Unfit to lead," I said, almost tasting the words. "You said it to me once. Today perhaps we all see the truth. Leadership isn't measured by who you manipulate, but by integrity and integrity." I looked directly at him, voice cold, precise. "Is not your strength," he faltered, scrambling. I can explain. Miscommunications, innocent mistakes." One board member cut him off, voice sharp. "Mistakes? Or a pattern? Because this looks systematic." He swallowed hard, eyes darting, faltering. I stayed calm, letting him unravel in front of them. Every second, every hesitation, every stumble, a brick in the wall closing around him. I handed out copies of the evidence. I step redacted nothing. Every decision, every manipulation, every whisper here for review. Another board member, stern, finally spoke. This is serious. We need to consider the implications." I smiled, faintly, controlled. The thrill was there, quiet but undeniable. Control was shifting, slowly, silently, but irrevocably. "Mr. Harlow," I said softly, letting my tone carry authority, "your credibility is under question. Your decisions, your actions, your ethics, all of it has been scrutinized, and the board must decide if leadership should continue under such circumstances." He opened his mouth, closed it, tried another angle. "You star exaggerating, misrepresenting." "No," I interrupted, firm, "just presenting fact, the truth." Eyes turned to me, sharp, skeptical but leaning toward belief. One by one, whispers of doubt turned into questions, then judgments. "Is this true? How long has this been happening? Why were we not informed?" I nodded, letting silence amplify the tension. I could feel it, the room bending subtly to my presence. I had been invisible for too long, underestimated, ignored. Now every glance, every murmur reinforced my dominance. "Isbeth documented everything," I continued, voice calm, poised, no exaggeration, no bias, just fact. "I believe leadership must be accountable, and accountability starts with transparency." He tried one last attempt, fumbling, desperate. "IVR always acted in the company's best interest." A board member Sip's laugh was dry, Sharp. Best interest or self-interest, because the evidence says otherwise. I kept my posture steady, arms relaxed, voice even, decisions made for ego. Not results, cannot stand. The board decides, not fear, not manipulation, not whispers. The tension was electric. He was unraveling, piece by piece. I could see it in the slight tremor of his hands, the faltering gaze, the desperation that no polite smile could mask. And I, calm, poised, unstoppable, watched. A final nod from the chair of the board. Questions turned into action, decisions whispered behind closed doors, and I felt it, subtle but undeniable, control had shifted. I inhaled slowly, savoring the moment. For the first time, the words once hurled at me, unfit to lead, were reversed, recontextualized. The power that had been stolen, manipulated, and denied was now mine, quietly, irrevocably. I left the room with a smile that didn't need to be seen, a calm that didn't need to be proven. The whispers, the doubts, the arrogance, they had crumbled. I didn't gloat. Not yet. I didn't need to. I had orchestrated the downfall with precision. And in that quiet triumph, I understood fully the thrill of dominance, the real power of strategy, patience, and observation. Control wasn't loud. It wasn't brash. It was subtle, and it was finally undeniably mine. The boardroom was quiet. Too quiet. The hum of the overhead lights, the shuffle of papers, the subtle clearing of throats, it all felt amplified. I stood at the edge of the room, folder in hand, calm. Colleagues glanced at me, cautious, and then he walked in. My boss. The arrogance had faded. The confidence, the smirk, the self-assured strut, they were gone. In their place, uncertainty, a tight jaw, a tremor I hadn't noticed before. Mr. Harlow, the board chair said, voice steady, deliberate. After reviewing the evidence, we've reached a decision. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Silence was sharper than any word. I felt the tension coil like a spring. You're removed from your position, the chair continued. The words landed like a hammer. I saw the flicker, shock, disbelief, betrayal, all crossing his face. He opened his mouth, stumbled for control, but no words came. I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was it, the moment I'd orchestrated silently, methodically. And yet, I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. My revenge had never been about theatrics. This can spit be, he stammered, voice cracking. I spit given everything. Loyalty, experience. Everything? I asked softly, stepping closer, voice quiet but pointed. Or everything for yourself. You manipulated, undermined, controlled, all under the guise of loyalty. And now, the consequences have caught up. He looked at me then, really looked. The arrogance replaced by recognition. Not respect, not fear, recognition. Hi, he tried again. There must be some mistake. I shook my head. No mistake. Just truth. Just accountability. You made the choices. And now the board has responded accordingly. I could see the humanity in him, the flawed, petty human who had thought power was permanent. I could see regret flicker, brief and raw, but I felt nothing. Compassion wouldn't undo years of humiliation, of betrayal. My satisfaction wasn't in cruelty, it was in justice. Quiet, measured, precise. He sank into a chair, defeated, silent. I didn't step closer. I didn't raise my voice. The silence said everything I needed it to. Every corner of that room absorbed it. Every observer understood. The balance had shifted. The chessboard I'd set now crowned me in its quiet victory. One of the board members glanced at me, eyes sharp. This was all documented. Every step, I said. Calm, composed, unshakable. No exaggeration, no manipulation, just facts. He looked at me then, and I saw the spark of recognition, the understanding that it had been me all along, that the threads he thought invisible had been pulled with precision. And by the time he realized it, it was already too late. He lowered his gaze, defeated, silent. I felt a strange weight lift from my chest. Years of humiliation, whispers, doubts, manipulations, they had ended. Not with anger, not with confrontation, but with silent justice. I whispered to myself, almost reverently, this isn't set cruelty. It's Sep's reclaiming. It's Sep's balance restored. My dignity, my power, mine again. He looked up briefly, voice faint. You planned all this. I smiled just slightly, enough to convey control without arrogance. Every step, every misstep you made, every error you thought invisible. I turned it into truth, and truth always prevails. His eyes flicked to the folder on the table, then back to me. And, what now? I leaned back, calm, serene. Now, I move forward. I rebuild. I lead. And you, I let the pause hang, heavy and deliberate. Learn from the consequences. He didn't respond. The words had nothing left to penetrate him. The realization had set in. He had created his own downfall. Every whisper, every betrayal, every calculated slight, it all came home. I turned, walking toward the door, slow, measured. Colleagues parted silently. Eyes followed, not in fear, not in awe, but in recognition. I had reclaimed control, not with chaos, not with rage, but with patience and precision. As I left the boardroom, sunlight catching the folder in my hand, I felt it, the weight of years lifted, the thrill of justice exacted. I had reclaimed everything stolen from me, my name, my dignity, my power. And behind me, the quiet reckoning unfolded. No shouting, no humiliation, just the inevitable truth, poetic, measured, complete. Silence and victory. I walked into the office that morning, and noticed the difference immediately. The air was lighter, colleagues whispered, glanced, then straightened when I passed. The subtle shift of energy, it was intoxicating. Congrats, whispered Jenna from accounting, barely audible over the hum of keyboards. The press release, you really did it. I nodded, polite, calm, masking the thrill inside. Thanks, I said softly. A simple word, but it carried years of silent battles, humiliation, and carefully orchestrated plans. In the break room, someone mentioned my name again, in passing. Did you see the article? She handled the situation flawlessly. I caught the glance of Arya across the room, her eyes sparking. We shared a silent acknowledgement, the satisfaction unspoken but palpable. She knew the blood, sweat, and quiet patience behind every move. Later, I skimmed the media mentions, headlines praising transparency, leadership, and integrity. New leadership restores faith in company, one read. Another, from marginalized to mastermind, a story of quiet strategy. I smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, and whispered to myself, quiet strategy, that sips exactly what it was. In the hallways, colleagues approached, tentative at first. Your presentation, at the board meeting, one said. Voice low, careful, you made it undeniable. Thank you, I replied, steady, professional, but my eyes caught theirs. Some awe, some envy, some relief, that justice had finally been served. Another nodded. We weren't sure anyone could turn this around, but you did. I allowed a small, controlled exhale. It wasn't about being sure, it was about persistence. Emails poured in next, congratulations, endorsements, invitations for input on strategic projects. I opened one from a former skeptic. Your leadership is exactly what we needed. Sorry, I doubted. I stared at it, fingers lingering on the keyboard. Years of humiliation, whispers, invisible sabotage, all led to this. The vindication wasn't loud or boastful, it was quiet, undeniable, and public. A media call came later. How does it feel, finally recognized? A journalist asked. I leaned back, voice calm, collected, every word deliberate. Recognition is instead the goal. Restoration of trust is. I step here to lead, not to dwell on past wrongs. But yes, it feels good to finally have clarity acknowledged. Clarity, they repeated. That SEP's a polite way of saying you orchestrated a quiet reversal of power. I let a faint smile tug at my lips. Strategy is in set revenge. Strategy is preparation, observation, and execution. Results speak for themselves. Colleagues lingered nearby, listening. I could feel the weight of their eyes, the subtle nods of respect that had once been impossible. Some shifted uncomfortably, realizing how misjudged I had been. Later, in a small conference room, Arya leaned in, whispering with excitement. People are actually coming to you for guidance now. It sits as amazing. I nodded, quiet satisfaction simmering. It sups more than amazing. It sups proof that persistence, patience, and precision matter more than ego, gossip, or arrogance. A group of board members passed by. One stopped, eyes meeting mine. "We underestimated you," they said. "Not anymore." I tilted my head, calm, poised. Underestimating is easy. Seeing clearly, that sup's the hard part. Walking through the hallways, I felt it fully. The liberation, the sleepless nights, the anxious pacing, the small victories hidden in shadow, all led to this. Every pang of doubt, every pang of humiliation, every whispered comment, every subtle betrayal I endured had built a path to this moment. I caught my reflection in the glass wall, head high, shoulders straight, no tremor of insecurity, no hesitation, not the unfit one anymore, not the one crushed beneath arrogance and whispers, the one who had turned betrayal into legacy. I paused, fingers brushing the smooth surface, and whispered to myself, every step, every moment, it was mine to reclaim. The office hummed around me, alive with the rhythm of people working, but I felt a quiet center of triumph within, not loud, not boastful, pure. A colleague approached again, voice careful, respectful. "We all see it now. What you have done." I smiled faintly. "Then let's see what we can build together." The whisper of vindication lingered, subtle yet undeniable, and for the first time in years I felt free. Free from humiliation, free from doubt, free from the weight of a name once tarnished. I walked on, leaving the shadows behind, stepping into light, not just as a survivor but as the architect of my own legacy. I stood in the center of the new headquarters, letting my fingers brush the polished surface of the desk. My name gleamed on the wall behind me, calm, permanent, undeniable. It wasn't arrogance, it was reflection, proof. "Look at this place," said Arya, leaning against the doorway, eyes wide. "You really did it." I allowed a small smile, calm, controlled. "We did it. Every careful move, every calculated risk, it all led here." She raised an eyebrow. "And the board? The media?" "They said recognized what needed to be recognized," I said softly. "But this is instead about them anymore." My phone buzzed, a message from my mother. "I am proud of you, always have been, even when I didn't understand." I stared at it, letting the words sink in. Years of skepticism, concern, subtle doubt, it all melted into this moment. "Thank you," I whispered to myself. And then aloud, softly, "I wasn't perfect. I still have scars, but they are mine. I earned them." A knock at the door pulled me back. "Jenna?" From accounting, peeked in, tentative. "I just wanted to say, working with you these past weeks, seeing how you handled everything at Simbring." I nodded, calm authority in every gesture. "It stup's not about inspiration. It stup's about persistence, about patience, about knowing what you sup's capable of when no one else believes in you." She smiled faintly, gratitude in her eyes. "Well, I believe now." I allowed the quiet satisfaction to settle in, letting each word sink into the room like a stone in still water. My journey had been brutal, humbling, and exhausting. And yet here I was, stronger, wiser, in control. Arya came closer, lowering her voice. "Do you ever think about them? About him?" I paused, letting the silence hang, deliberate, heavy. "Sometimes, but not with anger, not anymore. Revenge was the teacher, not the goal. Painful, precise, illuminating. It showed me what I was made of." She nodded, understanding. "And now?" "Now," I said, sweeping my gaze over the office. My allies working, my family watching from the wings, subtle pride in their eyes. I build, I lead, I create. I don't need applause or validation. I rewritten the story that was almost stolen from me. The door opened again. My sister walked in, hesitant, yet proud. "You have truly become unstoppable." I let a small, genuine smile touch my lips. I don't need to be unstoppable for anyone else, only for myself. The world tested me, humiliated me, tried to bury me, and I rose, stronger, wiser, in full control of my destiny. She laughed softly, shaking her head. "I wish I understood sooner." "You did when it mattered," I replied. "Better late than never, and now we move forward." The quiet hum of the office, the soft clatter of keyboards, the low murmur of strategy discussions, it all felt like a heartbeat, my legacy. I let the calm dominance settle around me, not loud, not flashy, but complete. I walked to the window, looking out at the city beyond, sunlight catching the glass, casting patterns on the floor. Years of sleepless nights, doubt, betrayal, whispered comments, they had led here to clarity, to triumph, to empowerment. A colleague approached, voice careful. It feels different working under you now, not fearful, not unsure, confident. I turned, eyes steady, voice even. Confidence is instead demanded. It's steps earned by actions, by choices, by resilience, and by knowing that even in the darkest moments, you can rise. Arya stood beside me, whispering, and you, Seb, shown everyone exactly that. I nodded, letting the weight of every lesson sink in. Yes. And I will continue to show it, not as revenge, not as proof, but as who I am, fully, unshakably. I exhaled slowly, letting the silence stretch. Behind me, my allies, my family, the city beyond, they were all witnesses, not to a victory built on anger, but to a legacy forged in patience, intelligence, and unwavering resolve. And finally, I allowed myself to feel it. The liberation, the calm, the power that comes from knowing you've survived everything and turned it into something greater. My name on the wall wasn't just a title, it was a statement, a promise, my story, my legacy. And it had just begun.